You think? Okay. Good morning. For those of you that I don't know, my name is Diane Sawyer and I'm the president of the Reidsville Chamber. Welcome to our seminar this morning, Navigating the Waters, the City of Reidsville's proposed utility rates for 2024-2025. I am going to turn it over to our hostess with the mostest, our city manager, Ms. Summer Woodard. I'll give you that one. I'll let you put that one on. Either way.
Good morning. Thank you so much for attending. I would also like to thank Diane and all the members of the Chamber and Roy for putting this on today and allowing us the opportunity to connect with our residents. I'd also like to give a round of applause. I see one of our council members here, Mr. Councilmember Shannon Coates. Thank you so much for coming out. Also, for any of our city staff, I see a bunch of city staff here. Thank you for coming out as well. So today's portion of this is our Assistant City Manager and Finance Director, Chris Phillips, is going to go over what the proposed utility rates for the 24-25 City of Reidsville budget look like. Where we are in our budget process, we have at our May meeting, we presented our budget to City Council. We've had our first budget work session, and we are scheduled for June the 11th to have a public hearing on our proposed budget. But Diane and her team thought it would be a great idea and a great partnership for the City of Reidsville and the Chamber to come together prior to that proposed adoption of the budget and just be able to communicate with our constituents, members of the Chamber, and also our large industrial users what this rate increase looks like. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Mr. Chris Phillips, who is our Assistant City Manager and Finance Director for the City of Reidsville.
Good morning, everybody. We appreciate you all coming out, and I'm going to go through these slides. I'm not going to blow through them, but we'll go through them pretty quickly, and if there will be time for questions at the end if anybody does have questions. We appreciate all of you coming out, taking time out of your day to be here, and this is being recorded, so members, chamber members that couldn't be here and other members of our business community couldn't be here today, we'll be able to view this and get the same information we want to get out. This is really geared towards our business users, but we'll touch on residential as well towards the end. So, you know, anytime you're working on a story, especially a novel or anything fiction, they want to build up to the, you know, the big climax and the twist and the plot and all that good stuff. Well, this is not fiction. This is our real life. So I'm just going to hit it straight on with what's proposed. So it is a 35% rate increase in our proposed budget that City Manager just mentioned has been presented and will be voted on with a public hearing in June. It will be effective October 1st if it's approved with the budget, October 1st of 2024. So that's 4 months from now. And really the reason that date's out there is we have heard in the past, especially from businesses, that the longer time we can give them, more notice we can give them, the better. Obviously you have business decisions to make, and this is one factor in setting prices. And so we wanted to give a little bit of leeway. So we thought 4 months would work with revenue projections and some of the expenses that we're going to talk about today. Some of them, especially debt payments, actually will come online later. So we were able to have that window of time before the effective date. So how did we get to a 35% increase? First, I just want to make sure, let you know that we did have an outside consultant that helped us this year. We actually did a comprehensive improvement plan and a rate study performed by McGill Engineering. And they really looked at 10 years. So looking at the needs of the system, capital needs over the next 10 years, how we could get those things done over the next 10 years. And also looking at historical data from rates and usage to try to come to us with something that we could present to City Council that they could consider. And it's a 35% rate increase, but it breaks down actually between water and sewer. Water is 65% increase, so fixed and variable rates will go up 65%. Sewer is 25%. So obviously our 65% of water water's a lower number. So it's a higher percentage of a lower number, a lower percentage of a higher number. It equals out to 35%. Most of our customers do have water and sewer, so their bill, they'll see 35% increase. If you only have water, obviously you're gonna have a 65% increase, so your percentage will be higher. But again, it's of a lower amount, so the dollar figures would be lower when you actually see the dollars. It's a little confusing, and obviously we'll sit down with any of our customers and explain it to them one-on-one if we need to. Our largest commercial users, we're going to talk to them one-on-one and show them their specific bill, what the change would be going forward. But why more water than sewer? Well, anybody that knows their bill and looks at it knows that our sewer portion is higher. It's because the operations of the sewer plant are more expensive. So a lot of utilities, a lot of different cities that offer utilities, sometimes their rate is even. Water and sewer are exactly the same. Sometimes they run it as one fund. It's just a utility fee. But we keep ours separate, even though it is considered a consolidated utility fund for debt purposes and other purposes, but we do keep them separate. So we know what the cost is for water, we know what the cost is for sewer. Sewer is more expensive, but water has been lagging behind because some of the price increases we're going to talk about here in a little bit really hit the water fund a lot harder. So to get water where it's taking care of itself and sewer where it takes care of itself, the increase was different for those two because of that. Water needed to go up more and sewer did not need to go up as much. But overall, again, 35%. Okay. I think I've explained that, so it's probably confusing as mud, but again, be glad to go over any details and we will have time for some questions here at the end. So why, this rate increase now? Well, the last rate increase we actually had was in 2020, 4 years ago. So obviously the next point, inflation. You all think about 2020 and everything else you do, what has happened to prices, and obviously the city's got some of the same expenses that you have at your home or at your business. Electricity, chemicals is really a big one, and payroll. There's debt service needs and there's capital needs. I'm gonna go into detail on each one of these. So again, I said we haven't had a rate increase since 2020. This shows you back to 2010. If you all were here either as a business or a citizen in 2010, you'll remember we had what was considered a large rate increase then, sort of a resetting of our structure of our operations. So that's been 14 years ago. Seems like just yesterday in a lot of ways, but it has been 14 years. We've had a few rate increases since then. We had one, it was a 3%, but it was split into 1.5, 6 months, and then 1.5, 6 months later in 13, 14, 10% in 2016, a 3% in 18, a 5% in 20. So obviously we look at our rates every year and we look at the expenses of the funds every year and figure out, are the rates going to be sufficient or not. We were on this trajectory to go up, smaller amounts every 2 years. Obviously, you all know 2020 was a different year with COVID, pandemic. Council made a decision after that they were not going to go up on rates. Number one, 2020, a lot of our businesses really shut down. So we had savings in our operations because our customers, our large customers, didn't use a lot of water, didn't have a lot of sewer. So it was a weird year. So many different things happened, but financially, there was a lot of savings. But then, of course, inflation hit, and we ended up where we are today. So let's talk about inflation. Double digits, yes. We haven't seen double digits in 40 years. The city's not immune. We have the same expenses that folks have at home, especially electricity. So, we've seen rate increases in electricity too. And electricity is a huge part of running a large water plant and a large sewer plant, as you can imagine. Chemicals, this is one that, I wouldn't say caught us by surprise, but it is a little shocking when you look at how much chemicals have gone up. There were supply chain issues, obviously there were transportation issues, all that rolled into the cost of chemicals. And there's not a lot of folks that sell these chemicals, so there's not as much competition as you might have in some other commodities. but prices have more than doubled in chemicals. And again, huge part of the operation, more so we saw on water than on our sewer. Another reason that the water increase is higher because of the chemicals. And then payroll and benefits. I mean, most of you are business owners. You know what unemployment rate is right now, and you know we're competing with you for employees. So we have to have we have very good benefits as a government. So those we're able to offer to try to recruit, but they're not cheap. And we saw our retirement system has increased what we have to pay in for our employees. Obviously, health insurance goes up for folks every year, it looks like. So we have to cover those, but also, you know, you all know what it costs to recruit and what it costs to replace folks in your business. The training we put into a person, it's much more cost efficient to retain that person. So obviously that is a factor, and I don't want to be misleading and say, hey, we're going up on a raise because we're giving it all to these employees. We try to do the best we can for our employees to be competitive because we have to. And having long-term employees leads to efficiency overall, which is a cost savings to the overall. But just these are operating expenses. And so the increases we're talking about here, you know, I said it was 35% overall. Well, over 12.5% of that increase is from operations. So not quite half, but a big part of it is directly to operations. Debt service. So we do have the ability to borrow to improve our system, and with interest rates the way they've been the last decade, borrowing's been even more attractive because it is low interest, and we're able to borrow some money even better than a commercial business can. But we do have 2012 and 2013 revenue bonds. Those are 20-year debt, so 12 and 13, you can add 20 to it, so you know that debt's going to roll off in 2032, 2033. So we're about halfway through paying that, so we have another 10 years on that debt. We have a 2016 0% interest state revolving loan. State of North Carolina is really robust in the programs they offer. They're able to give loans at 0%. You know, that's the next closest thing to a gift, to a grant. We have to pay it back, but with no interest, it does make projects a lot more affordable. And so that one's 2016. Again, it's 20 years. So we're not quite halfway through with that one to go. And the projects these went into, like our spillway, you know, it's 20-year debt. Those are 40, 50-year assets. So in theory, you get a little window before you have to replace those things again. But there's other things that need to be improved upon, like these projects that are in process right now. So these three are all somewhere in the planning stages. Actually, they've been bid out. 2 of them have been bid out, 1 of them hasn't. They're actually starting to do some work now on these. And these are probably, you know, 2-year, 3-year projects when they get going. But we have state loans for these. So with a wastewater treatment plant has a bulk nutrient removal project. I know that probably doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but the people that are regulating our system, it makes a lot of sense to them, and they're the ones telling us it needs to be done. So that's a 20-year loan at 0% interest. Again, you know, can't ask for much better than that other than a gift, which we fortunately have gotten some gifts too, and I'll touch on that in a second. The other project, the wastewater treatment plant HIDWorks, that's some 50-year-old infrastructure where everything comes into the plant, and it needs to be updated and improved there, makes it a little deeper. I think we have maybe a little more activity than we did 50 years ago, so it's time to fix that. Again, 20 years. This one's not 0% interest, but 0.18, you know, 0.18%, pretty close to zero. And when I say 0% interest, obviously it's no interest. You pay back the principal over 20 years. There is an upfront fee, so the state does have money to be able to offer these loans and to manage these loans, the department. It's about a 2% fee on these that we pay up front. So, you know, 2% one time versus, you know, 4 or 5% over the 20 years. But again, the third project, the redundant water line, we have one feed line that feeds the entire city. And we've wanted for a long time to be able to have a second feed line. It's pretty important to get water to the city, and when something happens, it can take a pretty good while to get it fixed. That line's, again, approaching 50 years old, so the probability that something need to be fixed in that major feed line, it gets larger every year as it ages. We don't have any problems with it right now, but we want a redundant water line so that as we have to start fixing that feed line, we'll have another option. Again, 20 years, this one's at 0.1% interest is what the rate was at the time. So these new projects, the debt service is going to come online as the projects are finished in the next year or 2 years. That new debt service is a 6% rate increase. So we had a 35% increase overall. Six of the 35 is directly to the debt service for these projects. And as this debt rolls off, we're talking 2032, 2044, 2045. There'll be opportunities to borrow and to start reinvesting in these same things again. They're long-term assets, but nothing lasts forever. And we do have some parts of our system that is 100 years old, and we try to factor a lot of things into when we replace something. But it's amazing to dig up a 100-year-old pipe, and it's just like it went in, the day you put it in. Of course, 10 feet away, the pipe may not even exist anymore after 100 years. It's just whatever happened to them. Kind of like people, there's some 100-year-olds that are going strong and some that, are not. So, capital, I said it was operating, debt, and capital. So capital, we do have capital needs, and we have to reinvest in operations and our infrastructure. We don't want our system to be, 100 years old. Some of it's going to be, and we'll try to replace it. But, if you can get a system that's 50 years old, which means some of your stuff's new and some of your stuff's been there a long time, but you keep reinvesting and try to keep it somewhat new so that you don't have problems, especially when you look at expansion. And we do know Reidsville is growing. And so while this is not to pay for the new parts of the system, what's there in the ground has to be functioning and has to be able to accept the new pieces as well. So you have to always look at what's going on. This is a big part of what McGill did with the Comprehensive Improvement Plan, which is the CIP right there, the Comprehensive Improvement Plan. So this budget with this rate increase has $1,600,000 for capital. A lot of money for me and you, but not a lot of money when you look at our system overall. I mean, $1.6 million a year is not going to replace our system, but it'll go a long ways towards keeping it more current. So our departments made requests, a little over $500,000, $557,900. A lot of that is smaller equipment items. I say smaller, but when you get into some of the equipment that's needed, you're talking $300,000, $400,000 pieces of equipment, vehicles. So they're not cheap, but so those requests came through, and then the Comprehensive Improvement Plan had another little over $1 million. A lot of those really are infrastructure items like valve replacements, meter replacement, line replacements, and repair. We don't always just replace. Sometimes we can go in and do some work and bring a line back to close to new without replacing it. And the technology to do this stuff has really caught up in the last 10, 15 years. There's things they can do now that are so much less intrusive than digging up a pipe and putting a new one in. There's pipe bursting, pipe sliding, all kinds of different stuff. The ice pigging that they can do that's really interesting things, and of course less labor intensive, more efficient to do. So our money will go a little bit further. State allocations and grant opportunities. We always look for grants that will go along with what needs to be done, either from a regulation standpoint or just from trying to reinvest. And we're very fortunate to get some allocations. State of North Carolina's economy is very strong, and the General Assembly realizes that this kind of stuff is a problem, not for Reidsville, but for the whole state. Every city, every county that has this infrastructure, has the same aging problem. And so they have been very generous in being able to allocate dollars. We got $1.6 million in the last budget just for one outfall, older area of town. that the project is just now getting ready to come online as well. But, $1.6 million is 1 year for a lot of different capital. To be able to get that and basically a gift from the General Assembly is very helpful. And we're grateful to our Representative Reese Pearl and Senator Phil Berger for being able to put us in the mix to be remembered when they have excess funds. So capital, almost 16.5% rate increase just for this capital. And I think you can see that it is important not to get behind. Every year you don't do one of these things that's in this $1.6 million, guess what? It's probably going to cost more next year. So the further you wait, the more expensive it gets. So the results, just on our commercial side, this is our variable rate. Currently, water for a unit, so we do bill in units. Some places bill in 1,000 gallons. I think 1,000 gallons may be easier to understand because obviously it's 1,000 gallons, but a unit is 750 gallons. So if somebody says use 3 units, 3 times 750, I should have done 4 because that's 3,000. So if you use 4 units, you use 3,000 gallons. So we do charge a variable rate. So $3.59 water and sewer on 750 gallons. Anybody bought a gallon of water from the grocery store? You may be able to find it for a little over $1. So $3.59, we're selling you 750 gallons of water and we're taking it back and cleaning it after it's been used. So the proposed, it is going up, it is, 65% and 25%, 35% overall. So it's going from 84 cents to $1.40, increase of 56 cents per unit, $2.75 to $3.45 is 70 cents. Overall, it's going up $1.26 per unit. So if you are a small user, a smaller business, you may only use, 10 units. You may only use 7,500 gallons of water in a month. It's only $1.26 on the variable rate. Not a whole lot. Of course, the more you use, you multiply it times, it gets to be more expensive for large business users. We also have a fixed rate that our customers pay. So fixed rate and variable rate. This one's set if you don't use any water, you still pay this because there's fixed prices at the plant. So if everybody decided we're not going to use water for a whole month, there's still things at the plant that have to be done. And those are fixed costs. When we produce water, when we treat sewer, there's some variable costs to it. So you get your overhead, and you're all business folks, you know this as well as I do. The fixed cost is really supposed to be covered by the base bill, the fixed rate pays for those fixed costs, and the variable rate pays for the variable cost. It's not exact, but it's pretty close. So these went up as well. If you're doing math in your head really quick, you may notice some of these numbers don't look like the 65% and the 25%. The total went up 35%, but these things had gotten, over decades, had gotten kind of where they didn't make a lot of sense. Like you can see it's by meter size. So a standard meter is less than 2 inches. It's the flat rate for all meters less than that. But you can see like the 3-inch, water's $959 fixed, sewer's $911. Then you go to a 4-inch, water's $1,724, sewer's $2,050. More, less, less, more. And there really wasn't a rhyme or reason to it. It was just a way it was set up and then rolled with increases. So we leveled that out a little bit and made them make a little more sense in the proposed rates. But again, it is a 35% increase overall. So the largest users, a 6-inch meter, that's a really large water line going into a factory. They were paying almost $7,500 a month base bill before any usage. It's going to go up to $10,000. So for them, it's $2,500 a month, which is $30,000 a year. Of course, again, it's still only 35% of their bill. Just want to touch on these two a little bit. Small businesses, I showed the base rate is really where they're going to see their increase. So it's going to go from $75.98 to $102.58. There's a lot of small businesses in that, and it's hard to do a rate increase that you don't do it to your whole customer base. If you leave one piece out, then another piece has to make it up. So Everybody is affected. It says small business. Some of them are larger water users, but the smallest water users as a business, you think about a shop owner who just has a restroom that only the employees use, not open to the public. You know, they're paying right now $75.98, regardless of how much water is used. It's going to go up to $102.58, so $26.60 a month increase for those small business users. And even though I was focusing on businesses, I do want to touch on residential because I know a lot of you will live in Reidsville or your employees live in Reidsville. It's going up as well. You hear 35% and you think, you know, it's a lot, and it is a large increase. But for the average customer who uses 4 units, 3,000 gallons a month, 100 gallons of water a day a house uses, it's $18.19 a month. So less than $20 a month is what this 35% rate increase does. And that's with the 4 units, which is what an average house uses. So you can see it is going to hit everyone. And I hope, you know, what I've talked about today does kind of explain where it came from. And it's not just a shot in the dark. And the large increase in 2010 was sort of a reset. This is a reset as well. I mean, we're not looking at doing this kind of an increase every year, obviously. We try to weigh what we feel like the system has to have and what our businesses and residents can afford. I think you'll find, even with this rate increase, that our commercial rates are very reasonable, especially for large users, which, you know, they are a part of our economy, and to be able to attract a large user that has also usually a lot of jobs associated with it too for our folks is very important. And to keep the large users we have, I think when they go back and look, if they're comparing to what they used to pay, yes, it's a substantial increase. If they're comparing to what maybe another location they have pays, we're probably still going to be really competitive because we do offer a competitive business rate. And that's all I had prepared. I appreciate you all coming, and we do have time for a few questions if anybody wants to ask one, and I'll try to replay what you say so it'll be on the camera as well. Any questions? Or comments? I don't think I did that good a job, but yeah. We do have several of our folks with us here today. Our Public Works Director, Josh Beck. Both of our plant superintendents are here. These guys, you know, be glad to answer questions anybody may have as well. I think they're going to find that, you know, the data they see in their day-to-day operations definitely supports this. Yes, sir.
What was the motivation behind looking at a price increase? Was it we've been running a deficit for a while, or are we being proactive and wanting to avoid the deficit?
We have not ran a deficit. Of course, you know, every year it gets smaller, the return on our investment. So the industry standard is you should have an operating ratio of 1.2. So for every dollar of expense, operating expense, you should bring in $1.20. And that 20 cents goes to capital, it goes to debt. So to go to an actual ratio of 120, we would need probably, you know, 60% rate increase. We know that's the industry standard, but that's not a standard we've ever been able to obtain just because it's not affordable for our customers. So we try to hit a 110. So we bring an extra 10 cents over operating. And with the smaller rate increases you've seen, we've obtained that. We've gotten to a 109, a 110. There are a lot of factors in there too. You know, nobody likes a drought. Obviously, people have to fight not having enough water, but we have a great water supply. And so as people need to use more water because there's less provided by the heavens, we actually make money. So a drought year, we're in the drought business. So those years we actually can make a little extra money because, you know, we've already covered overhead. And so we're able to take, maybe we make a little more than we thought. And I'm talking a couple $100,000, not millions. But you take a couple $100,000 and you can buy a piece of equipment that maybe you weren't going to buy because you had a decent year. But what will happen is every year that return, that operating margin gets smaller if your revenues don't go up as you see expenses going up. And we just saw the expenses go up so much that we were getting behind. And if you do run a deficit in a utility fund, the state of North Carolina will recognize that. So, we have an audit every year, which includes all of our funds, our general fund, which is basically funded through taxes and other user fees, and then the utility fund is part of that annual audit. So the state gets that, and they monitor it, and they compare you to other units of similar size. They have a lot of metrics that they use, and you will get a letter from the state saying, hey, you guys are going to have to do something because your utility fund is not performing. And these utility funds are supposed to be business funds. So just like you all have businesses, we don't have shareholders, except the citizens are our shareholders. So we try to keep rates reasonable. Instead of a dividend to a shareholder, we try to keep the rates reasonable for our citizens. But it is supposed to be run as a standalone business. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Phillips, do you want to just maybe briefly talk about Reidsville's partnership with Greensboro and how that works and how that affects our overall budget?
Absolutely. So we do, especially in years where we have an increase, we do see questions about Greensboro. Folks have great memories, and a lot of our folks obviously love Reidsville, and this is their home. They've been here for a while, so they remember that we sell water to Greensboro. It's been about a 25-year partnership. Greensboro was really a great partner on the front end because they did plant improvements that they paid for completely. They ran the line and paid for the pumps. So everything it took to get water to Greensboro paid for. So we didn't have any upfront investment, and our plant really needed some upgrades when they did that. Since then, we've done several smaller upgrades, smaller projects, and Greensboro's always been a partner to pay their portion of those projects. So we really appreciate that side of it. We offer them water. We can give them up to 5 million gallons of water a day if they need it. A normal day is 1 million gallons. And 1 million gallons really is what's needed to keep the line flushed and the water fresh. So we expect them to be a 1 million gallon user every day. And that goes into the overall revenue. It goes into covering the overhead of the plant. It goes into trying to keep the rates for everybody else, reasonable. It's not. And the other thing, I make sure people understand, I know I've had this question a lot of times. We don't sell them water straight out of the lake. We sell them treated water. So when they buy that water, we've already had invested our time and our equipment and our chemicals and all that's in it. So it's not profit, it's revenue, which has an expense piece to it. But like I was talking about a drought, when we had the largest drought in 2006, Lake Reidsville, the people that built Lake Reidsville, we owe a huge debt of gratitude because they knew exactly what they were doing. We never had a problem with Lake Reidsville during the drought, and Greensboro bought all the water we could send them. And we were able to make a profit that year being in a drought, and we never had to cut our folks off either. And we have an understanding with Greensboro that if we ever do have to restrict, we would restrict them first. But it's just been a great partnership, and it'll continue to be, hopefully for a long time. The other thing we found out a few years ago, we were doing some plant improvements. In theory, Greensboro could be an emergency source of water for us. And we never had tried that until we had to shut our plant down for about 2 weeks to do some improvement. And believe it or not, we're downhill from Greensboro. That water rolls right to us. And for about 2 weeks, everybody in Reidsville was using Greensboro water, even though they didn't know it. So to have, a huge resource, a partner available if we need it, is really, you can't put a price tag on that. Yes, ma'am.
The departmental requests and continuous improvement plans, how long are those projects going to, I mean, the debts are around 20 years. What
Right.
are those projects?
It varies. There are some that are, a lot of the department requests, you're going to be more equipment, and usually, even down to a pickup truck, which if you've seen some of our trucks, we use them until, they're not really good anymore. We don't get much residual value out of them. But, we have to replace them every 10 years or so. So you see some of that. But the CIP really looked out 10 years. It just said what's on the horizon over the next 10 years. What could we do every year, a little bit every year, like valve replacements. When you start looking at valves across the city, and trust me, I know more about this than I want to, but I don't know everything about it. You look at all the valves, it's how you control the flow of water and sewer. You can turn off a valve here and make it go a different way. If you need to isolate a certain neighborhood, there's valves you can turn to make, and those things don't last forever. So to have a system where you can go in and replace so many every year, and usually the way it works is by the time you get through the whole system and replace them all, it's time to start replacing them again. So you need to have a constant source of revenue so you can keep doing that. And we've seen horror stories. You've all seen them across the country where some systems got really behind. And I won't say that we're not somewhat behind. I think we've done a good job of reinvesting over the years, but you see systems get so far behind that basically they have to shut down. And for a city of our size, that would be catastrophic. And we don't want to go down that road, and that's why we try to keep continually reinvesting. Anybody else? Well, like I said, I do appreciate your time. I know you all have other places you could have been, and appreciate Roy Sawyers is videotaping this for us, and it'll be available because we know folks are busy, but if you could drop this in, I think we've got a lot of good information here that could answer some of the questions folks are going to have. And we'll be doing more PR on this whole thing to get the word out. People get their information from lots of different sources, and we're going to try to hit all of them if we can. So thank you.